So the FOMC has been and gone and we got the same story. Powell wants more data. Wait and see. Never mind, ladies and gentlemen. Interest rates are now being held at 4.5% with the prospect of maybe cutting them in the future. That's if Trump decides to step in and say, you know what? Get out of the Fed, Mr. Jerome Powell. We don't want you anymore with your persistent coughing and your snidey remarks and your dismissiveness regarding the tariffs. Why would he not even answer any of those questions? He wouldn't even give the person or even thank the person for asking the question. Anyway, put that aside, what we're talking about today. Well, we got another big day and we've already had more news come out. Check this out. Microsoft, they ain't done too well on their earnings, but Meta, on the other hand, have absolutely smashed it. Tesla, doing all right, courtesy of Bitcoin, so we're going to be talking about that very shortly. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down what to expect going into the New York Open, and more than likely, Thursday is deemed as a midweek reversal point, courtesy of the hybrid system, so I'll be talking about that in this video as well. So if you are new, ladies and gentlemen, mad love for passing through to last night's live stream in the FOMC. Do the same practice. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's have a conversation. I didn't even say subscribe properly on that one, man. What a guy. So going into the Open today, we have the ECB press conference, which will be aired at 2:45 UK time. 8:45 Eastern Standard. Now, the idea is they're going to be cutting the interest rates on the euro, which naturally means that the euro will be depreciating in the future. Why? Because investors no longer want to put their money in a depreciating yield. Okay, so that means we go over to actual euro itself and we say to ourselves, okay, where's euro now? You can see euro is actually making a move to the downside because investors are expecting them to cut the interest rates, and the ECB is pretty aggressive with cutting interest rates. So that naturally means that when the euro goes down, the dollar dominance itself is going to start climbing back up. So we go over to the dollar, you can see it's now up 0.1% for the day, and it is currently basing out at the appreciation point of 7.7%. So when we do get into that ECB press conference, everyone is expecting them to cut the interest rates, so the response might be somewhat muted. But those of you that are trading euro, just be very careful with that situation. The prospectus is euro is going to be losing yield because they're cutting the interest rates, so investors are naturally going to go elsewhere. Now, going into today, guys, we do have the unemployment claims coming out at 1:30 p.m. UK time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard. You won't get this video in time for that, but my goal is to get you aligned with what to expect going into tonight, because tonight, guys, we have an earnings call from Apple. Now, the word on the street is that Apple is going to be delivering some really good results. Already, we've had Microsoft not really coming through too well. We go over to Microsoft price action. Now, you can see with Microsoft's price action, we are going into a gap down at the open itself. But what I've been noticing is we've been seeing a lot of buying the dip players coming into play. So even though Microsoft has missed its expectations, some investors might see it as an opportunity just to buy up some more. Why? Because AI is still advancing. Going over into Meta itself, you can see it's currently trading at $700, nearly $700 a share, with a gap up potential of $686 a share, and they've done really well on their earnings. Now, to top it all off, you got Tesla. Tesla are gapping up at the open to around $400 a share, and that's only courtesy of Bitcoin. Why? Because they hold Bitcoin and they've earned themselves $600 million worth of profit thanks to Bitcoin and new accounting rules. Now, with that being said, there are other companies probably looking at this thinking maybe we should buy Bitcoin, but then look at MicroStrategy. They only are exclusively to Bitcoin and they just keep on buying and buying and buying, and some investors might be put off the idea of why MicroStrategy keep on buying Bitcoin and not really giving it a chance to mature to generate them a yield, but MicroStrategy are making yield on holding so much and buying so much Bitcoin. So this could be the start of something. You know that we've got Utah wanting to pass the bill to start using Bitcoin as a reserve, and of course Arizona. You've also got Sovereign Wealth Funds recommendation by Larry Fink. So it's all starting to brew for Bitcoin. Now, going into Bitcoin price action itself, I did mention at the start of this video that the idea of a midweek reversal potential is sort of coming into play, and the idea is now that we've got Bitcoin currently set at the psychological ranges. Now, the psychological ranges are a very important point in the hybrid system. If you don't know anything about that, get yourself over to tradersreality.com and take the free course. Under the courses section, go to the free course breaking down the hybrid system. That's going to explain to you exactly what the psychological levels are. It's the third one down, I believe, where you're going to dive into its creation, what it is, and what you can do with it. Now, we can see Bitcoin is currently back at that psychological region, which is around 105,328. Now, with that being said, How is today going to gear Bitcoin up for the potential of a reversal to the upside? Because the idea is that midweek reversal tells us that Bitcoin spends most of the time in one range at the start of the week. And if it ends up being at the downside, the logic says that we're going to be expecting it to make a move back up to the upside. Bitcoin has made a very aggressive attempt back up, and it's not too far away from its all-time high. Going into the order flow for Bitcoin, you can see that we've got quite a few offers coming into play. Now, if you remember yesterday how I was talking about the idea of liquidations, when you zoom out on the liquidations chart, you can see that we're now starting to see a reduction in the long liquidations. If you draw your attention down below to this area right here, you can see that the liquidations are actually starting to taper off, as in the long liquidations. So usually when you see a big influx of liquidations coming into play, which we did have on Monday, where $1 billion worth of longs were wiped out, that usually resets the book, because remember, when you're trading with leverage, you're borrowing money, open interest, certain funding rates for various brokers and what have you. Okay, so people use that information to understand if we're now going to go into a wave of attacking short liquidations or attacking long liquidations. When you go back and study this, you'll find that every time we do hit a big influx of liquidations, whether it's shorts or longs, there's usually the reverse that's going to come out. That means in this instance, you've got long liquidations that have been hit. You can see big liquidations over here. And then we had Monday's event where it was big liquidations, but not as much as what it was previously. And now we're not really seeing that many liquidations coming into action with the longs, which tells us that there are a lot of short traders that are currently in positions whose liquidation points could be compromised today. Right now, we're seeing Bitcoin making a move to the upside. Now, with the good news regarding Tesla and the Bitcoin, it's naturally going to make investors think that companies are going to be buying Bitcoin and adding it to their books. Microsoft might cause a little bit of a sell-off across the board, but fundamentally, the fact that the Federal Reserve is holding out on the interest rates and they're going to be waiting for more data, the market's going to turn around and say, you know what, we've been absorbing high interest rates for a long time. Let's just get back to what we know. The Nasdaq is close to its all-time highs. Bitcoin is close to its all-time highs. The bonds market's doing all right. The yen is coming down. The euro is going to be coming down. Dollar is going to be appreciating. The yields are at normal levels. So what do we really have to be concerned about? Well, nothing too concerning, but we do have Apple's earnings coming out later on tonight at the close of the market. So that's going to be very, very important for us in understanding if we are going to see the sustained movement to the upside, especially for the Nasdaq itself, because you can see the Nasdaq is currently trying to make a little bit of a recovery back up. It is trending upwards, and we've got this gap over here between 21,846 to 21,776. So the idea is that if today's market is going to be welcoming with the data that has come out from Meta and Tesla, so out of the three earnings, two have done well and one hasn't done so well. I don't think the market is going to lose its brain because Microsoft hasn't come through with its cloud data services. But Meta is going to be one that's going to bring investors and say, you know what, let's plow into Meta. Naturally, Meta costs more than Microsoft. So if there's more purchases on Meta, then we can assume that there's more liquidity going into the market, thus bringing the Nasdaq back up. Okay. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, just to put it into perspective for you with price action for Bitcoin. Now, going into Bitcoin and the actual ETF, we can see we've had an increase on the balances. BlackRock have purchased another 600 ETFs. So we're seeing that balance go up to around 574,000. So as long as this balance keeps on climbing, it means that investors are holding onto their Bitcoin, especially now that Bitcoin is coming close to its all-time highs. Looking at the order flow again, you can see that we've got some offers coming in at the top side of 110,000 with 6.54 million, although that was originally 20 million. I don't understand why it's been removed. Right, there it is, 25 million at 110,000. So you can see we had two different figures there. So a lot of people are looking to try and sell Bitcoin on its move to the upside. And now that we've had this FOMC and we are in the wait and see mode, investors are going to go back to what they were doing before FOMC. Everything was moving up. So now investors are going to step back into the game and continue to mark prices higher. Now, one good thing that could be coming into play is, of course, the fact that Robinhood is now entering into the futures markets. This will now be a rival to Coinbase itself. So as a little bit of game for you, maybe if you start paying attention to Robinhood stock and, of course, Coinbase stock, and then you'll be able to understand if you're finding more people trading on Robinhood because of the fees, it's more lucrative for them. You'll end up buying the stock of Robinhood, and you can see it's trading at $51 a share. And you might see Robinhood rising up against Coinbase. Now, Coinbase is a little bit expensive. I have got a price projection of Coinbase to end up to around $550 to $600 a share by the third quarter of 2025. But with that being said, I think Robinhood could be one of those that's going to benefit off the back of traders trading cryptocurrency in the futures markets because they're just going to be earning on the fees. As we head into the New York session itself, we are going to be going into the Brinks box strategy. Now, the Brinks box strategy, I dive into this a little bit more deeper in the PDF that I've got right here, which is checklist part 8, and this is accessible to all the Platinum members. Inside of this Brinks box strategy, we dive into the criteria that is required for you to observe as the Brinks box creates itself. Now, the Brinks box is started at 2 p.m. UK time, which is 9 a.m. Eastern Standard, and it finishes at 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, which some of the OGs will know is the magic hour. And here is an example of it. See, it starts right here at 2 p.m. and then it finishes at 3 p.m. And usually, depending on where price ends up after that first hour, then we can assume that price is going to then continue in that direction. You can see it couldn't close above the actual Brinks box high right here after this stop run. This was a news play. And then, of course, it traded away for the rest of the session from that point. Another example would be this. You can see that in the news, in the actual open right here, it pumped up. And then there's a policy inside of the Brinks box checklist that says always focus on the recovery of the vector candles that occur in the Brinks box. They did just that. So you would be looking to avoid going long in the Brinks because that green vector candle, whilst the Brinks box was being created, was giving you the clue that there could be a potential recovery inside of the vector candle of the Brinks box itself. So that checklist itself is going to help you be aware of what to watch out for as it's being created in the chart itself. Now, as we go into the open, you can see Bitcoin is trading above the 5 and 13 EMA. Now, primarily for my holders, what you got to be looking for is how Bitcoin behaves today above the 5 and 13 EMA. Now, some of you might be looking at this thinking, should I go in on spot on Bitcoin? Now, as long as Bitcoin's today's candle finishes above the 5 and 13 EMA and hypothetically does not go anywhere else above this 105, 311,000, then we can say to ourselves, this could be a good spot for us to go in on spot, okay? With the idea that you're aiming to see Bitcoin try and make a move to the upside towards the all-time high, and that will be a good move for anyone on spot. From 105,300 to around 108,000 or even 109,000, you're grabbing a $4,000 move on Bitcoin. Pay yourselves, take something off the table. No one went broke taking a profit. So if you've enjoyed today's video, mad love and respect, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can take something from it. All my day traders, just be very mindful of the Brinks box play itself. Let the Brinks box complete so you can get a good idea of whether it's going to try and claim the high and continue, or is it going to go and break below it and continue away from it to the downside. We do have Apple earnings coming into play, so maybe the Nasdaq could be holding off a little bit. However, if they are expecting that the earnings results for Apple are going to be good, then investors are going to want to try and get in now before Apple does get a little bit more expensive going into the close and then, of course, the news release. With that being said, mad love and respect. Hit like, subscribe, do all of that madness, and I'm not going to wink at the end of this video. Peace. I blinked, but not winked. Never mind.